I started looking at the glass half full instead of half empty and realized that, there's 16 people that don't have life. I have life. So, yes, I'm paralyzed, but hey, there's many people in the world that are worse off than me. I choose not to be a victim. I haven't got, victim mentality is just something you don't need. The day of the accident was a training mission. We had what was called a crew minimum. We took off at 11 that morning. We flew out of Monterey Bay. I was just an observer, didn't have my radar on or nothing, and sitting back in the tail. We came back to Moffett to do practice landings and takeoffs called touch and goes, where you land, take off, circle around, land, take off. And we were using the left runway for touch and goes, which is also the side that NASA Ames is on of the field. And the NASA plane was a big, large Convair 99, like a DC-8 type jet, big 4-engine jet that a flying laboratory called Galileo. And they'd been in touch with the tower and had been initially assigned the right runway for a full stop landing. There was a couple of contacts with the tower, and he reconfirmed the right runway for the NASA plane. Then at the last moment, he said NASA cleared to land full stop 32 left. And of course, the NASA is on the left side of the field, their hangar at NASA Ames, so he didn't question the reassignment, he just said 32 left, thank you, sir, and he moved over in his approach. Our man, Lieutenant Schwarting, came on board and said, wait a minute, touch and go on left side of the field. And I guess the tower, not realizing he said left to the NASA plane, said, yes, continue. And so we ended up circling in front of them. And by being a jet, they were a little bit faster on the approach than we were.
We were playing a golf match. I was playing for Sunnyvale High School as a senior at Sunnyvale High School. We were the first group out. That's when I heard engine noise, and it wasn't a typical engine noise. It was more like roar, 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 on and off kind of engine roar.
We were over near the golf course in a commercial zone, and I was just getting ready to get out of the vehicle to go to this particular building, and everybody on the sidewalk was looking up, pointing and screaming.
What I saw was two aircraft, the one large jet and one smaller jet. The smaller jet was nose up, kind of tucked under in front of the wing of the larger jet.
Our pilot hit the gas to get away, but he went up, and our tail cut into their nose, and so both planes kind of went up together from what I understand.
We stood there, the four of us stood there, just mouths gaping open, and watched the two aircraft descend really slowly, it seemed like forever, down to the earth and crash about, I'm going to say, within 100 yards or so of where we were standing.
We turned around, put our lights and sirens on, went to the golf course, and the only access we had was through this underground tunnel where the golf carts go. So my driver, who was Officer Ray Kohler at the time, said, we're going to go under the tunnel. So as soon as we came out the other side, it was obviously where the crash site was. Saw a big open parachute lying on the ground, and we were headed right toward it.
When they hit the tail, it knocked the tail off, and that's where I was sitting. So like cracking open an egg and dropping out the egg, I fell out. They said I fell out about 120 feet to the ground.
We thought he was dead, And so myself and another person who I have no recollection of who that person was, pulled his parachute over his body.
And I told Ray, I said, don't go near that, don't drive over it, could be somebody under it. So at the last minute he diverts the rig, and we pulled up to the front of the wreckage. It was really blazing at that time, a lot of black smoke, a lot of debris around, things burning on the ground. So the P-3 Orion was behind the Convair 990, and it seemed to be pretty much destroyed with probably no possibility of survivors in it. And as soon as I got out of the rig, 3 golfers met me, and they say, the pilots are trying to get out, they're alive, they're clawing at the windows, can you help us? So I had a 1.5 inch pre-connect line from engine 5, extended and charged, and I turned on the nozzle and I covered the cockpit area, trying to blow the smoke and fire and everything away from it to protect whoever might be inside of that. But as soon as I did that, then all these secondary explosions started, and they must have been oxygen tanks or other kind of tanks on the planes, and they were exploding very loudly with balls of flame going up, a lot of heat. I proceeded to go to the fire rig again, get a fire axe, and I started pounding on the windows. Didn't even make a dent, didn't even make a crack. Well, some of the crew came over to the cockpit, and I said, do you have anything to get into the cockpit here? We think the pilots might be alive or struggling to get out. So they got a Sawzall, a hand-operated saw with a big metal blade, and we cut an inspection hole on the top of the fuselage above the pilot's head. It was laying on its side. And once we got in there, we realized that the pilots more than likely died on impact. We stopped that, and then we decided to concentrate on extinguishing all the fires that were going on. And I understood that either our personnel or other personnel lifted up the parachute canopy and discovered Bruce under there, and that he was still alive, and that they gave him first aid and transported him by ambulance to the local hospital.
I hit my head right before I left the plane, which put me in my first day of a 93-day coma, I was told. I hit the golf course kind of in a sitting position, drove my chin down into my chest, broke my back, severed the spinal cord, broke my leg, crushed my skull, broken ribs, first, second, third degree burns, I was told. And the girl I was engaged to back then, she told me that I was the only one that lived out of 17 people out of both planes. There were people I flew with, so they were in that sense, they were my friends. They all outranked me, but they were still my friends. And the loss of, and then the 11 people I didn't know on the NASA plane, it was still the loss of life. And then I spoke to the young man from the tower a year after the year after the crash, and let him know I didn't blame him. He made a mistake. And I said, don't. It was hard for me to tell him. I try not to torture yourself. You made a mistake, but life goes on, and so you got to keep going on. And then later, I heard he committed suicide. So it was terrible because 17 people did die that day. So it was awful. It was just not good. About a year or so after October of ¡76, I kind of reconnected with the Lord and started looking at things differently. And He gave me a different attitude, and I started looking at the glass half full instead of half empty, and realized that there's 16 people that don't have life. I have life. There's people always worse off than you. So I started kind of looking at life in that way. It didn't take the challenge away in a sense, but it gives you strength to go through it. It is what it is. Life, it is what it is. Life is life, you know, but it's life. And so God's still good.